All right, MA Marignon turned 49. I did actually see a little bit of chat, so yeah, Oceania sadly has been eliminated. But otherwise, this turn is mostly a mystery to me. So let's see, someone claimed, this is Ariu, claimed the Throne of Misfortune. It's always nice to get a claim. Dire Portent, that's probably not a good news. So this is Earthblood Deepwell, and I do not remember who this is, so we'll have to go double check. And we're doing a little bit of summoning, mostly our patrollers with the wolves, but we're also going to bring in some Lamia Queens, mostly for magic diversity. They're pretty decent nature and death casters, and they often get a bit of blood as well, and it's looking like, assuming I get my act together, we will be able to at least dabble in blood, and Lamias will help us do that. And we don't really actually have a lot of nature casters or death casters, so just useful mages for a good price, I think. And most of our site searching did not work out, but we did find, Sky Split Oak, so that's a little bit of air, and we're trying to increase our air income, so it's nice to get some of those. And then not too many battles this turn, so we just have one raid out against Kailasa, kind of in force. So we split out a decent amount of stuff. But he leaves basically nothing behind, and so I'm assuming that force went to his capital, where we will have to dig him out. And then, we've got Fascia and Vanheim, which we're not really, I think this was on top of their fort. We're mostly not too interested in what's going on, because it seems like Vanheim, is mostly just raiding. So while they do have a lot of territory, maybe on the border with Vanheim, they'll actually be able to push, but this is deeper in, and I don't think this is going to work out. Fascia has brought enough casters here. I don't remember if Vanheim has shock resistance on the Bless. It doesn't look like they do. Right, the Twist Fate and Blood Surge, which is good, but against lightning, there's too many lightning casters. Ooh, one of them did manage to fly to the back and get a caster, it looks like. But, then the lightning bolts got him, and I think the other one routed off. So I'd say that's probably a good result for Fascia. They lose a Storm Captain. That's not insignificant. In fact, that's probably not too far off. Van Jarls are pretty expensive. I mean, they are good raiders, but they're not cheap. So overall, that worked out, definitely better when you consider all the troop losses as well for Fascia. I know, it looks like there was only the one Van Jarl, so there's probably some other groups out there like that, but if I was Fascia, I probably wouldn't be too worried about the raiding. I'd be more worried about whatever Vanheim is bringing in. In Shinyama, it looks like they are pinging a throne, right? This is a Monolith and Watcher throne, so those can be pretty nasty. Monoliths are difficult to get rid of. Actually, let's just check those paths real quick. Nice, so an even split on the normal Monolith paths, but all 5s with a lot of gems, and then of course the Watchers throw electricity, so you definitely have to think about that type of throne. And then it looks like Tianqi is riding out against Shiniyama, which is definitely not what I was expecting. So let's take a look at what they've got, because this could potentially be very relevant for our future. So it looks like, mostly garbage, which is to be expected, like some low-level summons, although they did manage to get hold of a Living Mercury, which is kind of like a water elemental, but it's surrounded by a poison cloud, and it's very dangerous. I would say probably even more dangerous than a water elemental, although they don't regenerate. So maybe a bit of a toss-up. Still, usually not what you want to see. Also, we know all about these Amazons that we were hoping to get a hold of. So they're out in front, probably just going to do a little bit of skeleton spamming, I'm guessing, and then here's the communion in the back, and they are almost assuredly going to be dropping rocks. And so we've seen Shiniyama's force before, I believe. There's actually significantly less here than I was expecting, because it looks like a pretty big force on the strategic map, and mage-wise, it doesn't look like there's that much support. And not really any gems either. I wonder if somebody has one of the items that, so he's got an FFG of war, which increases, how big the army looks. I think it's plus 50 or plus 75. So Shiniyama is actually not in as good of a position as I thought. Personally, I don't really like using these items so much on the offensive, because, once you're forced into battle with the commander, hey, there's a little bit of wooden warriors. Not that it's going to help against the rocks, right? The communion, that's going to be dropping a lot of rocks. But anyway, yeah, once you go into a battle, like usually the jig is up with those army increasing size items, but at least it looks like it's increased. Oh man, this is so painful. For Shiniyama, this is really nicely done by Tianqi, because of course, like, yeah, he doesn't really care too much about like this garbage up front, you know, and then he's just making some skeletons. I'm assuming I have been hearing some skeleton making sounds, but yeah, they've fatigued themselves out, so, you know, not too much chaff, and of course, like, now some of Shiniyama's Daibakemono are getting through, and once they get into melee, they're going to chop through pretty much everything here quite quickly, and now they're going to some Blade Wind spam, still dropping some rocks. The mages do somewhat consider friendly fire, you know, somewhat, when choosing spells. Yeah, not that much. They do love to drop rocks. So maybe there's some casters in here, like, yeah, that are only earth. I'm not really sure why, like, sometimes they go for the Blade Wind, but usually they go for the rocks. So yeah, I don't know. Shiniyama, it could go either way, right? Like, it really just depends on like where the rocks drop, and like how the morale checks go. Because I gotta believe that at this point, Shiniyama has taken enough casualties that the morale checks are happening. And like, yeah, we see routes on both sides, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, the armies of Shiniyama are routed. So Tianqi holds out just barely. And like, yeah, if we were looking to be more aggressive, like, we might try to jump on this fort. But I would prefer to keep Shiniyama as a friend, and considering we're already trying to vulture that other Tianqi fort, which I don't think has nearly as much in it, but probably has similar stuff to what we just saw. We're not going to love that either. I think it's probably best to just use this opportunity to improve relations, and, you know, let them know, like, hey, yeah, like, you know, you keep that fort. You definitely put in the legwork for it. So speaking of legwork, Tianqi actually retains like about half of their stuff. They don't lose too much in the way of their rock droppers, just one of those fellows, although they do lose most of their Amazons here, which is not the end of the world, although that will mean like a little less chaff generation in the next battle, and then of course they're going to have significantly less chaff for the next battle. On the other hand, Shiniyama loses a lot. I do think that the mage support for this army is a little too light. You know, maybe he was thinking that Tianqi just didn't have that much stuff left, which is kind of true, right? Like, you know, troop-wise, especially, like, he didn't really have that much. A lot of this has been summoned in, no doubt, like, while he's been under siege. But, you know, this many mages, like, you gotta respect that. But still, right, like, you know, not bringing that many mages, he only loses 2 of them, and, you know, they're not cheap, but they're not expensive either. The Daibakemono, losing almost 60 of them at 25 gold apiece, that does hurt, and probably is going to take a little while to replace. So not the end of the world for Shiniyama, but this Asphodel is probably watching this, and, you know, I already suspected that there was a failure on this fort. I don't 100% know that to be true, but this might trigger Asphodel, you know, to jump in against Shiniyama, which, yeah, wouldn't be ideal for us, because we were kind of hoping to use Shiniyama as a counterweight, right, to help us when eventually, I'm sure, a showdown with Asphodel will happen, assuming, you know, we don't get taken out earlier, which could happen. And so we anger a monster boar. Oh, this is very sad. These are really hard to find, and so yeah, it's just going to continue to increase unrest until we get rid of it. Oof. Thief has stolen some of our fire gems. That is uncool. We need those. And we find a few nature gems, although it doesn't really make up for the loss. And then we finish construction. This is where the secondary enchantresses are, or the first enchantresses we found. And then we finally breached that Tianqi fort. Not ominous at all, considering what just happened to Shiniyama. And then critically damaged for that Bandar fort, but we're not quite there yet. And of course, Oceania has been vanquished. So yeah, I'll catch you guys after the jump. Alright, this is the situation and what we did about it. I'm recording this after the fact, so as ever, we'll endeavor to not spoil anything. First things first, we are finishing off the Bandar War here. We've just got sort of a nut squad to try to take this province. We'll see how that goes. It does look like there's not a whole lot inside this fortification. It is critically damaged, so we should break through next turn, and we'll be able to issue the assault order. And then we're also going to try to lock down Bandar's capital. We did scry on it. There is a ton of province defense here. We've bumped into it before, but you know, their province defense isn't fantastic. It looks like they do have at least one cap-only mage, so potentially could bring out some relatively large nature magic and possibly a Soul Slay Communion, but it doesn't really look like there's much, you know, in the way of actual troops. mainly those Seekers of Truths and some militia. So fairly confident in this. We're going to send forward that same force, but mix it in with some mages, mostly just providing fire elemental support. Also a bit of solar eclipse to help our knights, and some anti-magic. If this fails, it's not the end of the world. It will be painful, but like I said, it doesn't really look like there's a whole lot in here. Also of note, we got a really lucky roll with our first Lamia Queen, Death 4, which is fairly transformational. Our Pretender only actually has Death 3. We are bringing another Lamia Queen in this turn. We're also risking this Lamia Queen immediately, which, looking back on it, a little bit scary. We're going to send her in to help out with this troll situation. Mostly going to throw some fire elementals at it, a little bit of swarm, body ethereal. She should be fine. We gave her some gear, protection 21. She has 50% regeneration, a second form, hopefully a body ethereal will find her, coupled with the soul vortex, invulnerability, and all the other stuff. It should be fine. But perhaps not the most responsible thing. Certainly looking back on it, I think twice borning her first would have been the better call. We can afford to wait one more turn. But that's not what I went with. We're continuing to recruit in Archocephaly. We are still somewhat worried about Asphodel. We're pushing our scouts a bit deeper into their territory. We still haven't found their capital yet. It does look like they're relatively extensive. Like, we don't know how far down they extend, but yeah, they look large. We know this player is good. So I definitely think it's worthwhile doing recruitment here. Also, potentially, Shiniyama, right? They could decide to change things up once they finish with Tianqi. This loss here for them is really good news for us, because it's just going to slow them down and make it less likely that we'll be their next target, because it'll give us a chance to consolidate our hold on this fortification, which we are going to try to storm this turn. And we'll have more recruitment here, and hopefully have finished off the Bandar War more or less at the same time that they managed to take this last fort. So I think we're going to look a lot less appealing. Otherwise, pushing site searchers around, doing a little bit of recruitment on top of this throne, just some regular infantry, really just to hold up the walls, and make sure that, Ariu doesn't take a look at our border and think, hey, that's completely undefended. And then, of course, doing a lot of recruitment in Mictlan. Here we're recruiting knights. This is probably the most likely place for our offensive. We don't have a ton here yet, so we do need to recruit up, both from whether we're going to be on defense or offense. But again, unless these scouts have been forgotten, right? It looks like, there's 2 scouts being recruited every turn on our border. That's a little concerning. And we do know that, this war is winding down. It does look like there's a decent amount of stuff in here for Xibalba, because more siege strength has been brought in, but the walls are still not cracked. But I expect this will be over shortly. Otherwise, for research, continuing for Alteration 7, then headed up to Construction 8. We'll see about this. This is mostly to double down on our, Fire Gem to Gold. There's an artifact that improves your return on that spell. And, I've never researched Construction 8 in a multiplayer game before. So, if we get there first or relatively early, we'll probably also try to forge a few of the other more useful artifacts. And of course, Weapons of Sharpness and Golems are very useful at Construction 7, although Golems compete with our own air summons for Astral Pearls, so I feel like on a lot of human nations, Golems are really important, and it's not that they're not useful for Marignon, it's just that you have other potentially better things to be spending them on, so it's a little harder to also push Golems out. And then this other stuff is kind of more speculative. Evocation 7, I believe that's where we get Firestorm, so that potentially could be useful for us. We do have plenty of fire wizards. In terms of the wider world, our site is a little on the limited side. It does look like Menchaca is about to be knocked out. They're getting attacked by Ariu and Ulm. And so yeah, we're trying to push our scouts a bit deeper. We also kind of want to see what Jotunheim chooses to do after that big win. But it is going to be a pretty tall order for them. We can see that Shiniyama is also cleaning out Ermor. It looks like Jotunheim had taken Ermor. And Jotunheim also has another fort up here that's under siege by Independence. So there's not a whole lot left for them other than that stack in their capital. And then taking a quick look at the Vanheim-Fascia conflict, it does look like Fascia has battled back a little bit. They broke this siege. Unfortunately, now their capital is under siege. It does look like the elf that was on top of this fort, has chosen to jump off or died. And possibly Fascia has been able to raid back a little bit of land, but yeah, this is still not looking very good for them. And I think that more or less covers turn 49.